Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. The U.S. Defense Secretary calls out some of the media reports of the U.S. attack on Iranian nuclear facilities. Plus, 9 men face multiple charges after authorities uncover a major human trafficking operation in Alberta. And residents of Carberry, Manitoba voice opposition to a plan to upgrade the intersection where 17 people died in a 2023 bus crash.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks so much for joining us. The U.S. Defense Secretary has called its strikes on 3 Iranian nuclear sites a historically successful attack. Pete Hegseth called out a preliminary intelligence report Thursday that suggested the strikes had damaged but not permanently destroyed the sites and only set back Iran's nuclear program by months.
Whether it's fake news, CNN, MSNBC, or the New York Times, there's been fawning coverage of a preliminary assessment. I've had a chance to read it. Every outlet has breathlessly reported on a preliminary assessment from DIA. I'm looking at it right now. Again, it was preliminary, a day and a half after the actual strike, when it admits itself in writing that it requires weeks to accumulate the necessary data to make such an assessment. It's preliminary. It points out that it's not been coordinated with the intelligence community at all. There's low confidence in this particular report. It says in the report there are gaps in the information. It says in the report multiple linchpin assumptions are what this assessment, a linchpin assumption, you know what that is? That means your entire premise is predicated on a linchpin. If you're wrong, everything else is wrong. And yet, and still, this report acknowledges it's likely severe damage. Again, this is preliminary, but leaked because someone had an agenda to try to muddy the waters and make it look like this historic strike wasn't successful.
Meantime, the head of the United Nations nuclear watchdog reiterated today the damage was, quote, very considerable, but thinks using words like annihilated is too much. Iran's supreme leader downplayed the attacks and said his country delivered a slap to America's face with its retaliatory strike on U.S. military bases in Qatar, where Canadian troops were also stationed. No one was hurt in that retaliatory strike. A 49-year-old Canadian man has died while in the custody of ICE in Florida. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement says Johnny Noviello was found unresponsive Monday at a federal detention center. Noviello was being held in custody pending deportation proceedings after his May 15th arrest. ICE reports Noviello was arrested at a Florida probation office and charged with removal over drugs and racketeering convictions in 2023. Noviello had been in the U.S. since January of 1988 and became a legal permanent resident in October of 1991. The Tsuut'ina Nation Police Service and the Calgary Police Service have uncovered a major human trafficking operation which led to 9 men facing multiple charges. Codenamed Project Buffalo, the operation began in May and discovered individuals had arranged meetings to obtain sexual services from minors, notably underage Indigenous girls. Tsuut'ina police have released the names of 9 individuals, none of whom are part of the Tsuut'ina Nation itself. A 10th individual was also mentioned previously but will not be released as their charges are not proceeding through the courts. Or they are now proceeding through the courts. The charges include luring a child for the purpose of obtaining sexual services, obtaining sexual services for consideration from a person under 18, and invitation to sexual touching of a person under 16 years of age. The federal court has approved a class action settlement for people who suffered abuse at federally run, quote, Indian hospitals. Former patients filed a lawsuit against the government 7 years ago, alleging the hospitals were rife with abuse and unfair treatment and settled out of court earlier this year. The class covers people who were admitted to these segregated facilities and who suffered abuse during their time there, with compensation ranging from $10,000 to $200,000. The federal government ran 33 such hospitals between 1936 and 1981. A ruling today by the U.S. Supreme Court is being hailed as a victory for the pro-life movement. The court has ruled that South Carolina has the power to block Medicaid funding for Planned Parenthood clinics in a technical interpretation over healthcare choices that has emerged as a larger political fight over abortion access. We get details from Lindsay Whitehurst of the Associated Press.
The case wasn't directly about abortion, although Planned Parenthood is the single largest abortion provider in the U.S. Instead, it's about other health care services that its clinics provide. Those include things like cancer testing and contraception and pregnancy testing. The Supreme Court's conservative majority found that Medicaid patients can't file lawsuits to go to the provider of their choice. This is expected to cut off Planned Parenthood's primary way of fighting back against Medicaid funding cuts in court. The court's 3 liberal justices dissented. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote that the ruling will likely have tangible effects on people's lives because other conservative states will likely follow in South Carolina's footprints and cut off that Medicaid funding to Planned Parenthood. Medicaid patients often go to Planned Parenthood for reproductive health care services because it can be hard to find a doctor that takes the publicly funded insurance. The decision comes amid wider efforts to defund Planned Parenthood by cutting off Medicaid funding to the organization. That includes efforts from Republicans in Congress.
Some controversial developments on the vaccine front today. The Trump administration's new 8-member panel of vaccine advisors appointed by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. endorsed this fall's flu vaccinations, but with a twist. They voted to only approve vaccines that don't contain the preservative thimerosal, which contains mercury and which anti-vaxxers claim causes autism.
Thimerosal is recognized as a developmental and reproductive toxicant and is listed as a chemical on the California Proposition 65 list since 1990.
Even if the amount available in the vaccine, maybe that amount is safe, but that's not the amount we're exposed to. We're exposed to mercury from other sources, so it's cumulative. And there is a need. And if we care about public health, we should try to minimize exposure to mercury. We will now go on to the vote.
Relatively no conflict of interest, yes.
Dr. Pagano?
Pagano, no conflicts of interest, yes.
Dr. Hibbeln?
Joseph Hibbeln, no conflicts of interest, yes.
Dr. Malone?
Malone, no conflict of interest, yes.
I vote no. Meissner, no conflict. My point is, the risk from influenza is so much greater than the non-existent, as far as we know, risk from thimerosal. So I would hate for a person not to receive the influenza vaccine because the only available preparation contains thimerosal. I find that very hard to justify.
Where we will listen to various views and opinions, both from scientists but also from the public.
The panel voted 5-1 with 1 abstention that people ages 6 months and older get a flu vaccination this fall only using single-dose formulas that are thimerosal-free. Residents of Carberry, Manitoba are voicing their opposition to a plan to upgrade an intersection where 17 people died in a bus crash in 2023. The Manitoba government is proposing an R-cut intersection, which stands for a restricted crossing U-turn. The design allows traffic on the main highway to flow freely, while people on one side of the highway are prevented from crossing directly or turning left. Instead, they must turn right, merge with traffic, execute a U-turn, and then merge again.
The R-cut, they feel, is the safest and probably least expensive option. Yeah. But here in Carberry, this community and a small group of people have got together and we started a petition. That intersection has been slated for an overpass for years, 20 years. And it's time that rural areas get the same attention as urban areas, and we just need to get with the times. That intersection has been deadly. It's proved to be deadly. It's time to bring it up to safety.
They're trying to do it quick. They're trying to do it cheap. They're trying to put a little feather in their hat that they get to be the first R-Cut in Manitoba to have a little gold star on their name. And that's what they're trying to do, and not actually think about the people that live here and use it every day.
Put a stop sign in the middle of it, slow traffic down for 400 meters each side of it to 80 kilometers and be done with it. It'd be just as cheap as this, and we'd all sign on for that.
We are doing our job to do proper engineering, to be objective as we can. We're all humans, and it's a team of people, and to make a recommendation that we feel would be the safest and most appropriate for this location. Once we make that recommendation, government then has an opportunity to decide what it wants to do with that.
17 people died in June of 2023 when a bus carrying 24 seniors crossed into the path of an eastbound semi-trailer on Highway 1. The collision caused the bus to catch fire and end up in a ditch. On Wednesday, Iranian Power held a ribbon-cutting ceremony for their new lithium battery energy storage system located at the Raymond Hydro Plant. The new 15-megawatt system, which initially began operations in May, will be able to take in excess energy to store for periods of high-powered demand. While the hydro plant only operates during irrigation season, the battery site will be able to charge and provide the grid power throughout the entire year. The president of Iranian says the new paired facility could power, theoretically, 150,000 homes across Alberta.
This is the first of its type in Western Canada where a battery energy system has been built in conjunction with a hydro site. And so we can obviously charge these batteries right from our hydro site during irrigation season, or we can charge them right from the electricity grid if that's more advantageous to us. And then obviously we can put power from the batteries to the electrical grid when required. Energy storage systems like this help regulate variability that is happening with our electricity grid, because there's been such a demand and such an increase in renewable energy projects, and mainly that has been the big influx of solar and wind projects within the province. But unfortunately those projects do not run on a 24/7 basis depending on weather conditions. So a project like this, a battery storage unit, can help with some ancillary services to the Alberta Electrical System Operator, or the AESO, and it helps them be able to manage the grid effectively and keep the right frequency on the grid so that we don't get things like potential brownouts or blackouts for Alberta consumers.
The battery storage site near Raymond will also serve as a pilot project with the hope of further expansion to other sites in the province. Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services are giving residents a reminder to keep all safety precautions when taking part in water recreation activities, especially around or in the river. This week, LFES has been undergoing public safety diving training to prepare for an event that involves gathering evidence or potential drownings in bodies of water. One instructor at this particular demonstration at William Pierce Park says these waters have virtually no visibility past 2 feet underwater and could potentially be filled with hazards near the bottom.
When we start to look at what we're doing here, drowning is the #1 cause of accidental death to children. It's the #1 cause all the way out until the time they're about 20, and it's almost #2 cause for adults worldwide. It's frightening down there. Anyone who's done this for any length of time, it's been on the bottom in zero visibility, crawling across things we have no idea sometimes what they even are, and tells you they've never been scared, they're lying, including myself.
You want your judgment at 100% when you're out on that river. We have a very lazy, long, slow-flowing river, but there's still some things that can get you in trouble. There's unpredictable currents, there's varying depths in the river, so you don't always know what you're going to be dealing with. None of the bodies of water, aside from the river in the city of Lethbridge, are really meant for swimming. They're not. You're going to find that the water is dirty. There's a lot of mud and silt. There's going to be leeches in most of these water bodies. There's a lot, especially this year in such a hot, dry year, there's weeds all the way around most of the bodies of water. When we're looking for a place to practice our diving, we can barely find places that have enough bottom to do it. It's just all weeds.
Lethbridge Fire reminds those planning to head down to the river that it's best to let someone know your plan in case of a worst-case scenario, especially tubers. They also advise staying away from the high-level bridge due to the amount of hazards and snag risks surrounding it. Shoes for Kids YQL is launching its 5th annual shoe drive to support youth. This initiative helps hundreds of children and youth start the school year with new shoes. The shoe drive will take place on Saturday, August 16th from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. at Murray Chevrolet in Lethbridge. Mallory Christensen, president of the Shoes for Kids YQL Foundation, says the goal is to collect 400 pairs of new shoes and raise $20,000.
This year alone, from September to June, we have served over 1,000 kids with brand new shoes. Just in the month from September to October this year, we were well over 600 kids, which was triple any other year that we've had. The reason why our numbers are getting so big is because people are actually utilizing the service. I think there's such a stigma, whether you're a single parent or a kinship provider, or maybe mom and dad just don't have the means to actually grab a pair of shoes, and now they understand, like, whoa, this organization doesn't need to know who we are, why we need these shoes. We maintain that confidentiality and dignity, and I think families are actually understanding that and reaching out. We'd prefer that a family puts groceries in their fridge and uses us to have a brand new pair of shoes for their kids. We were able to help over 85 kids this year participate in extracurricular activities alone. This means that students who may have not been able to play volleyball, soccer, basketball, badminton, were able to participate in extracurricular activities this year.
Starting today, members of the public wishing to donate shoes ahead of the official drive in August can do so by visiting our front counter during regular business hours. Our youth engagement officers witness daily the challenges many young people face in our community. They also see the powerful impact that a simple act of kindness, like receiving a new pair of running shoes, can have. It's more than just footwear. It's about confidence, it's about self-esteem.
You know, during the summer, the kids run around and their shoes get wrecked. They play in the mud, they jump in the mud puddles, they have growing spurts, and as a result of that, they need new shoes. So for those people that can't afford the new shoes or whatever their circumstance is, we like to support the community.
Shoes for Kids YQL is a nonprofit organization founded in 2021 to serve Lethbridge, Southwest Alberta, and surrounding Indigenous communities. Despite the heavy rain last weekend, the city of Lethbridge has reinstated its fire ban in the River Valley, effective immediately, and until further notice, no open fires are allowed. The city says current weather conditions, including warmer temperatures and low humidity, have significantly elevated the fire risk in the River Valley. Residents are also advised to exercise caution, particularly when disposing of smoking materials, as they can easily ignite dry vegetation and cause uncontrolled fires. And with that, I will be right back with a look at the 7-day weather report. Welcome back. Just another lovely day today in southern Alberta, but a risk of a thunderstorm this evening. And for the rest of the week, we are looking at above seasonal for sure, especially as we get close to Canada Day there. So 24 for the high on Friday with mainly cloudy skies, a lovely sunny weekend. High of 25 on Saturday, up to 27 degrees on Sunday. Monday, June 30th, sunshine, 31 degrees. And then as we get into Tuesday there, that is Canada Day. That's the start of July, 31 degrees. So it'll be a warm Canada Day this year, and then 29 degrees the following day on Wednesday. So not a bad 7-day forecast. We are staying above average for the most part there. Average high for this time of year, 24 degrees. Average low, 10. 35 was the record high on this day, happening back in 1912. And in 1920, we saw the record low in Lethbridge, which was only 1 degree. 5:25 is when the sun rose this morning, and sun goes to bed tonight at 9:43 p.m. So we're still looking at 16 hours and 20 minutes of daylight, just like yesterday. Okay, on the west coast tomorrow, 30% chance of showers in Victoria. There, 16 for the high, 40% in Vancouver, high of 18. In Edmonton and Calgary, increasing clouds, and then 30% chance of showers by the afternoon with a risk of late afternoon thunderstorm. 21 for the high in Edmonton and high of 19 in Calgary tomorrow. Looking to the rest of the prairies, 60% chance of showers and risk of thunderstorms in both Saskatoon and Regina tomorrow. Saskatoon sitting at 24, 26 is where Regina will be sitting tomorrow. Winnipeg coming in at 27 tomorrow with sunshine and also 30 to 50 kilometer per hour wind gusts. As we look to the central part of the country, we are going to be seeing more precipitation there. So Toronto seeing a 40% chance of showers, 26 for the high there. Now Ottawa sitting at 25 tomorrow, but by the afternoon, there's going to be expecting 5 to 10 millimeters of rain starting in the afternoon. Could see a possibility of a thunderstorm there as well. 25 for the high in Montreal with mainly cloudy skies right there. Getting over to Atlantic Canada, we're seeing mainly partly cloudy skies, a lot of clear skies as well. Could see some increasing clouds later on in the day though. 25 is the high in Fredericton, Halifax coming in at 24, 19 the high in Charlottetown, and St. John's 2 to 4 millimeters of rain expected there tomorrow, and only a high of 12 degrees, which is well below normal. So there you have it. That is your forecasts. Canada's largest shipper of crude oil says it would pitch a new Alberta-BC pipeline under only the right conditions. Enbridge says a lot still needs to happen before it makes such a proposal, noting it will always assess market diversifying projects, provided there is a demand. This comes after Alberta Premier Danielle Smith recently said the province has been in active conversation with with pipeline companies and is pretty close to having one or more come forward with a plan. Smith wants to see a pipeline running from her province to the port of Prince Rupert in BC so that more oil sands crude can be exported by tanker to Asia. A tentative agreement has reportedly been reached between DHL Express Canada and the union representing workers who have been locked out since earlier this month. More than 2,100 truck drivers, couriers, and warehouse and clerical staff represented by Unifor were locked out June 8th before the company temporarily halted operations last Friday. Unifor says details of the agreement won't be disclosed until after a ratification vote is held. BC billionaire Ruby Liu says she thinks she can have at least 20 new department stores up and running within 180 days of signing leases for spaces formerly used by Hudson's Bay and Saks Canada. That timeline is one of many highlights in a package prepared by Liu's lawyers, sent earlier this month to the landlords of 25 leases she wants to take over. Tara Deschamps with the Canadian Press has the details.
So she's told us before that she wants to operate a modern department store. She wants to fill it with dining spaces and entertainment and children's play spaces. But now we have a sense of what she's doing behind the scenes to make that a reality. Ruby's plan includes her hiring 2,500 to 3,000 staff. That's what she says it will take to staff these stores. She has the 5,000 resumes from former employees and other people that are looking to work for her, and she's been going through them. We know she's hired at least 10 key executives, many of them with 10 or more years of experience from the Bay. And she says she also has one of the Bay's former presidents, Wayne Drummond, giving her some advisory help. She's talking about millions of dollars that she's going to spend on getting these properties ready for people to move into, or for her to move into rather. It will take millions for that to happen. The Bay has been quite candid about that because they've had a lot of broken escalators, they've had HVAC problems. We've heard that these properties have been in disrepair for a long time. So Ruby's prepared to spend a lot of money on getting them together.
Liu says she's prepared to pay $100 million to stock the stores, but landlords say Liu's plans are still too bare bones and they want more details before they let her onto their property. Now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 185 points on the day to finish at 26,751. The Dow was up 404 to 43,386. The S&P 500 was up 48 points on the day to finish at 6,141, and the Nasdaq was up 194 to 20,167. West Texas Intermediate oil was up 25 cents to 65.17 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 3 cents to 3.54 US. Gold was down 4.58 to 33.2822 US an ounce, and silver was up 34 cents to 36.65 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.33 per bushel, barley is at $6.49, canola is at $15.78, and corn is at $7.32 per bushel. Live cattle June contract was up 10 cents to $221.70. Feeder cattle August contract was up $1 to $303.30. And lean hogs July contract was down 50 cents to $112.32. And the Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours and currently sits at 73.30 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, the Tsuut'ina Nation Police Service and the Calgary Police Service have uncovered a major human trafficking operation. 9 men between the ages of 21 and 57 are facing multiple charges, including luring a child for the purpose of obtaining sexual services. A recent poll shows that 73% of Canadians support a national energy corridor and pipeline running from coast to coast. But will the Carney government walk the talk and make it happen? Dan McTagg, president of the Canadians for Affordable Energy, joins us to give us his take. That is coming up next. Also, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. You can also visit our website or YouTube channel anytime to check out more of our stories and interviews. The demand for coast-to-coast oil pipelines looks like it's staying strong, but we still don't have any concrete actions to see shovels in the ground. So joining us to chat more about this is Dan McTagg. Dan served as a Liberal MP for 18 years in Ontario and is now the president of Canadians for Affordable Energy. Many of you use Gas Wizard to check out local gas prices. Well, that's part of Dan's company as well. Dan, welcome. Great to have you with us once again.
It's great to be here. Really pumped to be here today to talk about something that hopefully will be Canada's help in the days to come.
For sure. Okay. So speaking of pumps, gas pump, let's get right to it. So Dan, a new Nano survey done at the beginning of June shows that 73% of Canadians support a national energy corridor and pipeline extending from Alberta to Eastern Canada. So it's interesting to see continued support for this post-election. So will it happen now that Bill C-5 has passed? What do you think?
Well, I think some of it will happen. The question is the devil's in the details. You're giving the federal government extraordinary powers to be able to say, we want these things done, we want them done very quickly. The shortage in Canada has been electricity. The shortage in Canada has been oil and gas. The shortage in the sense of not being able to send to the rest of the world. We know that in the past few years, no fewer than a dozen of our greatest trading partners and allies in terms of NATO have come to us saying, listen, we need more of your natural gas. We need more of your oil. They didn't come here for windmills and solar panels and hydrogen. They came here for oil and gas, which is what most of the world functions on. 85% of our economies depend on it. Canada has a lot of it, but has chosen over the past 10 years to say no or hum and haw, or in the case of the previous prime minister, suggest that there's no business case, which I think to most people, even here where I am in Ontario, was absolute rubbish and nonsense. We knew it, save and except those who have no understanding of that every time they get on a cell phone or they're using their iPhone or taking transportation or many of the things we take for granted that are done because of oil and gas. So the question is whether the federal government will have allowed itself the permit, the power to be able to get oil and gas pipelines built. Saving that, I don't see how building a hydro corridor from east to west is going to somehow, respond to Trump's tariffs, much less be able to resolve the problem. We have plenty of electricity. There's a lot to go around. I live in a province where we've had hydro for 50, 60 years, long before it was cool and trendy. So I guess the bottom line is I'll be looking very seriously to see whether or not Mark Carney shows his face once and for all and is prepared to build pipelines, oil and gas. Short of that, I think it's pretty clear that it's more of a doubling down on his net zero agenda, which has been very costly to Canadians.
Oh boy, any chance the Senate won't approve Bill C-5 or will they make any amendments?
Well, I understand that they're prepared to fast track it. And of course, then it goes through what's called a gazetting period. Having passed legislation in my life, including changes to the criminal code, When a government bill is passed, it usually takes 30 days to get through the Canadian Gazette, the publication, and then it's formally received as law of the land. So that gives the wide berth for the Mark Carney government to actually make good on its pledge to build pipelines. And there can't be any really mucking around here. I mean, they can't go around, turn around and say, well, there's no national consensus, or we're going to find a few people who are going to object to this. You're not going to find unanimity on anything in Canada. So for that reason, it's time to fish or cut bait, Mr. Carney. Is it going to be pipelines that are going to carry oil and gas, which the rest of the world needs, which would give Canada a significant economic boost? And I'm not just talking about for the oil sector. The economic impacts of wealth through distribution in this country through equalization can't be gainsaid. If we double the amount of oil and gas we sell in this country, we would be on fire. No deficit, no debt, loss of jobs, and loss of investment. So a lot at stake here. It seems to be a no-brainer. But there's always those out there who are grifting their way into working for various so-called charities and foundations who are going to find objections to these things. While at the same time, countries like China and India are going to continue to burn coal rather than burning clean Canadian natural gas.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting getting back to that survey there showing that momentum towards pipelines. It's showing that even Quebec has 60% support for it. Any chance of political change over there?
Well, yes, especially on natural gas. And, some people didn't notice it. I did. When Chrétien came out to the Liberal convention, had been invited to the leadership as he'd been sort of shunned over the past 10 years, as have many previous Liberals. His comment was, maybe not oil pipelines, but definitely natural gas. Why? Well, Quebec's sitting on what is the extension of the Marcellus shale play here in eastern Canada, which provides most of the natural gas that eastern United States, eastern Canada now uses. Quebec could exploit its own. The carbon footprint would be much less. And of course, it would be a solution to Quebec and hydro because they're running out of electricity. Yeah, all those dams that they built that are very invasive can't be done these days without massive consent from Indigenous communities. Spew methane for decades to come, as we're seeing with some of the major hydroelectric projects. They're running out of hydro. They're telling people with EVs, hey, don't charge up at night, and certainly don't charge in the dead of winter because we have to borrow more electricity from Ontario. So I think for Quebec, there's an option here, and natural gas is the way ahead. I don't want to be a spokesman here for natural gas. I think the industry will have to do some of its own, but it seems to me that if you want an affordable, practical, realistic solution that accords with the public's concerns, and yes, serves as a bit of a stopgap when you have people like Donald Trump, saber rattling, then yes, let's get our act together. The fact is, this should have been done 10 years ago. Why Canadians hummed and hawed and decided to vote to support parties that basically destroyed Canada's energy sector, and with it, investments in Canada, is any wonder. But maybe it's taken 10 years of hard economic reality to get a lot of Canadians to finally, especially here in Canada, Eastern Canada, wake up.
Yeah. In Western Canada, so Alberta continues to push for new pipelines and coast-to-coast access to tidewaters. And BC Premier David Eby now says he's not against the pipeline, but he just doesn't want public money spent on it. Your thoughts on Eby's approach?
Well, David Eby is part of a government that costs Canadians to have to spend $34 billion to a pipeline called the Trans Mountain Pipeline Extension, TMX, that would have cost the Canadian public zero. So, I'm glad Mr. Eby, the Premier, as his previous predecessor, who I did happen to cross swords with many, many times in interviews, if he's prepared to have a conversion on the way to Damascus, so be it. But let's understand something very, very clearly. We have $34 billion on the books because the provincial government of British Columbia hopped in on a pipeline that had been absolutely approved by the federal government. The federal government gave its stamp of approval even after Kinder Morgan had gone through hoops for 10 years to build that pipeline. When it finally did, the federal government said, well, we don't care if you get to be harassed by, groups, fanatics, climate activists, and whatnot. That's your fault. Then actually Kinder Morgan came back to the federal government and said, no, that's your responsibility. If you don't do it, we're going to sue you to the heavens. They virtually did. The finance minister of the day, not without going through histrionics on this, Morneau, realized it, bought the whole pipeline, and to build it cost us about $34 billion. So if Eby's saying as long as it doesn't cost the public, look, he's done enough damage. He's an expert. He's an authority on the province going out and causing significant damage to one pipeline. In my view, and I have no stake in the game, British Columbia and the NDP should be paying that $34 billion, not Canadians. But be aside, if he's prepared to allow pipelines to get through British Columbia to whether that's LNG or that's oil, then I think that's a good thing in of itself, and I hold him to his word.
And then we have Alberta Premier Danielle Smith saying there could be a private company or a group of companies stepping up to the plate soon with a proposal to build a pipeline. Do you have any inside info on any of this, Dan?
No, I don't deal with the industry itself. In fact, when I do my gas price predictions, they're not very happy with me because they lose millions of dollars a year since I've been doing it for the past 30 years, ever since I wrote this little report in 1998 called the Liberal Committee on Gasoline Pricing when I was a backbench MP at the time. Really got me into the energy field, but not from perspective of the upstream, that is the oil and gas production and distribution. It actually had a lot to do with competition on the retail side and on the refinery side. Nevertheless, no, I have no intel that tells me where these companies are coming from. But look, they've been burnt badly. They have a federal Liberal government that has done its very best to block and to say no to pipelines and to, keep bills on the books, acts on the book, like Bill C-69, which bans, oil sea-bound traffic on the Pacific West Coast to a large extent. Bill C-48, which in reverse does the same thing as well in terms of putting unusual requirements to building pipelines. The Liberals have not got rid of those things, and yet they have Bill C-5 that they've just passed. So I'm not sure which is going to win out at the end of the day. But as I said at the beginning, I really want the true Mr. Carney to show his face once and for all, because everything I read about this man is to block pipelines and is to shut down the oil and gas sector, is to double down on net zero and to strangle the oil sector from any type of financing. If he's changed in the past 5 years, even though he's published a lot of his book with a republication at the bottom saying, I'm now Prime Minister of Canada, if he's changed his view, then that would be remarkable. And as I said, that would be a little bit like Paul's conversion on the way to Damascus.
Yeah, will the real Mark Carney please stand up? Please stand up, right? Okay, so former Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault is now Canada's National Parks Minister, and he's been tasked with establishing 10 new national parks. So apparently one of the places being considered is in northern Manitoba, potentially blocking the path to a new port on Hudson's Bay to export oil and gas. So have you heard any updates on this?
Yeah, I mean, this is not surprising. This is the kind of tactics and miscreancy that we've seen that tends to block any potential. But it's going to get ironed out very quickly, and we'll find out if Mr. Guilbeault is still the activist in cabinet, or whether or not Mark Carney, on his way to making his conversion, is going to basically say, you want to keep your portfolio, you want to be the Lieutenant Quebec, this is none of your business. Yeah, you can have that park, but you're right in the middle of it. We are going to have a right of way that will ensure, if that's the route we take, that we can get oil to international markets. Why? Because we have a 50, 60, $70 billion deficit. We have a country that is running economically at levels that are as low as we've seen in the 1980s. And for that reason, necessity is the mother of inventiveness. Nice to be cool and trendy. But to use a word, I think Carney should be using this because it's not 2015 anymore.
Yeah. Let's touch base on the EV mandate. So at this time, they're saying by 2035, all new vehicle sales will have to be electric vehicles. But some EV plants in Ontario have been on pause. They've been put on pause, Dan. So this is causing at least temporary job losses. So is the need or demand just not there for them right now?
Yeah, look, electric vehicles, and I'm going to put my old cap in my work public relations, media relations for a little tiny company called Toyota Canada. When I left it, they were number 5 in Canada, number 2 or 3 in the world. Today, they're number 1 in one, and they're also number 1 in exports. So it's a company that said, yeah, we'll go along with the grift. We'll do things to make the government happy and avoid having to pay indulgence penalties to Tesla because they produce EVs, but we're not going to go down that road. I think the most serious hit to Canada's fantasies over having that as being our only mode of transportation, the only option we have when we buy, is when the Trump administration was elected on November the 4th, and with it, the pledge to get rid of the EPA variants, as well as, of course, getting rid of EV mandates, which the Biden administration had directly and indirectly put in place. I won't get into detail about that, but it means that Americans won't be buying. When 93% of the cars you build in Canada, most of which are in my community here, Oakville, Milton, are sent to the United States, and suddenly there's no requirement in the United for Americans to buy EVs, it means there's no market for this. And is it any wonder that short of government subsidies to entice consumers to buy these things, subsidies to have them build plugins, subsidies to build infrastructure for charging ports, subsidies for batteries, subsidies for automotive companies to build them. When you remove all those things, no one wants these things. There's a reason why 100 years ago in the 1920s, no one wanted the electric vehicle. It's not to say it's bad. In some instances, it has great application. But to impose that on Canadians at a time in which there is no market either for auto manufacturers, and there isn't a sufficiently sized market in Canada for these things, with numbers dropping, it was an exercise in futility and stupidity.
Yeah, those numbers really aren't looking very good for EV production. Do you think that Carney might actually be forced to either repeal that mandate or make some amendments or delays?
Canadian automobile manufacturers are saying, no, we can't do this. We, a mixture of things. Internal combustion engines are far more efficient, more effective, less costly, and from a manufacturing point of view, less invasive. If I'm a Canadian, whether it's Ford or Stellantis or GM, they've all spoken very, very effectively in the past couple of months. This has got to end. This is stupidity 101. And anybody who thinks that you're barely able to get 1 in 10 people to buy one of these things under those circumstances, that you can get to 100% is kidding themselves. And of course, if the federal Liberals want to pursue this, as they did carbon taxes, as they did with this fantasy, I think once Canadians realize just how damaging this is, they're going to basically take the Liberal Party and their net zero friends, put them on the 30-yard line and punt them right through the end zone.
Oh boy. Well, CFL season is just getting kicked off here. So there you go.
That's right. Can't wait.
Dan,
Go Argos.
there you go. Thanks so much for chatting with us today, Dan. Great having you with us.
Thanks for having me today.
Dan McTeague is a former Liberal MP and is now the president of Canadians for Affordable Energy. Well, marriage is a beautiful thing when things are going well, but it's a minefield when it's not. So how do we navigate our way through that minefield? Well, today's guest has some solid advice. Brent Taylor is a Lethbridge marriage coach and the author of the book, His and Hers Greatest Need. That's with a Z instead of an S. Brent, welcome back. Great to have you with us once again.
Yeah, great to be back. Great to see you as well. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so we've had you on before talking about the book, but for those of us who maybe forget, can you give us a brief overview of your book and also what services you offer to help couples improve their relationships?
Right. Well, an overview would be through my pain comes my passion. Having to lose everything or lost everything, a 26-year marriage, my $100 million company. My daughter didn't speak to me for about 6 months. That was 26-year marriage. And then a 1-year marriage after I kind of thought I figured things out, but that fell apart and it was even more disastrous. So I lost everything twice. And I looked up and I said, why, God, why? And he started to show me his and hers greatest need. And what I've found, it's not commonly taught anywhere. I've asked well over 12,000 men and women the greatest need of man. Nobody's guessed it. And maybe 20 or 30 people have guessed the female's greatest need. So the woman's need is a little bit more commonly known, but the key is then what breaks it down. So the single biggest reason what breaks it down, and then how to build it up. So that's really kind of how I got started, was doing that. And I got an awesome opportunity to meet Dr. Gary Chapman. I had sent him an email in 2016 when I was finishing my book, asked him if he'd read it, and he said no. But God had a different solution. He wanted me to meet him in person. And he woke me up from a nap to go where he was speaking, a sold-out crowd of 1,800 people. And I didn't know he was there. So I was saying a little prayer with my mom and said, man, I hope I get to shake his hand and give him my book. And 10 minutes later, he walked right by me in the cafeteria. I shook his hand, gave him my book. And I had an endorsement by Dr. Gary Chapman. So for about the last 12 years, I've been sharing with over 12,000 men and women couples this book, and I'm finishing my second. So it's just been an amazing time. And they usually say where you've had your greatest pain is where you have your greatest passion.
Oh, wow. And then you're also a marriage counselor. So what kind of services do you offer to help couples improve their relationship? I know you also, besides the book, you also have classes, right? And videos, I believe.
Yeah, so I've made a video for the book. It's 17 minutes. When I was doing a talk at the Sterndale Bennett last fall, I had a bunch of couples show up. And one of the couples that heard me on the radio, her husband said to his wife, can we watch this video? And on the day she was ready to walk out on her 15-year marriage with kids, he asked if we could watch the video. He didn't know she was going to walk out. They watched the video. It stopped her from walking out. They said, we're going to watch it for the next 4 Sundays and we're going to read your book, and they're still together. So just the video alone, and the book, but the video alone has an amazing, powerful way of look. So for a lot of men that don't like to read, the 17-minute video it's got diagrams. I draw circles. It all makes sense. Men's got to get it in the head before they get it in the heart. And women usually get it in the heart before they get it in the head. So, but yeah, so that I do those services. We do personal coaching, so private coaching. I'll do some small group coaching. I do groups or just with men and women even. I'm coaching a couple of ladies in Sacramento and in New Jersey. Their husbands have walked out, 26-year marriage. So whether it's on Zoom or in person, I have my home office here, and we have several sessions, whether it's 3, 5, or 8. And the whole goal is that you shouldn't need to be going to see counseling for a year. So something unique that I do that most therapists or counselors don't do is I do a profile. And that profile involves 4 key areas. It involves the love languages, the personality, also the differences between men and women, the gender. It also gets into his and her greatest need, and it gets into the design for marriage. So, and your values and beliefs. So do this profile, and couples say, how do you know us completely? How do you know them? So before we get started, you get that profile, and then we have the sessions that go from there. So we cover my book. We cover, I'm faith-based. So if they're into that, knowing God's design for marriage, we get a little bit more into that, but whether they're not, or they are, we can do those things as well. So, and I've had many couples really turn their marriage around. So
Brent, that is all amazing. But in your research, what's the number one thing that tends to break marriages apart for women?
Well, and that's a really, really good question. I know we've covered this before, but safety and security. When a woman, so trust and security is massive for a woman. When they don't feel that they can trust you and that security is threatened, they struggle to be open and intimate with you. For men, that's different because their core need is not security and safety. The man's core need is significance. Every man wants to be his wife's hero. But when she, rather than believing in him, maybe belittles him, and she doesn't realize that she's belittling him, she starts mothering him, then he feels not significant. He feels kind of small in her eyes, right? So for the woman, it's trust and security. That's huge. And if she can't trust you, the intimacy is huge. A lot of guys don't understand how massive that is for a woman.
For sure, yes. And then for men, what's the top thing that breaks down a marriage? You were saying they need to feel that significance.
Right, because a man was designed to be his wife's hero, right? Christ, the church, husband and wife. Jesus came to be our hero. So he wants to be your hero. The woman is always the beneficiary. A lot of ladies don't realize that she's always the beneficiary. But when he feels insignificant, so if she doesn't believe in him, so respect is important, admiration is important, but when she believes in him, she will respect, she will admire, and that's huge. And when he feels like number one to her, he wants to go to the moon for her and with her. She's always the beneficiary.
Amazing. I think so many of us go into a marriage thinking that it's going to make us happy, and maybe that's not the right motivation. So you write about the importance of having the right motivations in a marriage relationship.
Yeah, no, it's so important. I know we've done this before, but if you cross your arms there, Jeanette, and tell me which arm is on top.
It looks like your left one.
Right. So if you cross your arms, so mine is my left. Well, I say reverse it. A lot of people struggle. Or you take your hands and you clasp your hands. Which thumb is closer to you? And if you separate all your fingers, reverse all your fingers, and put the other thumb closer to you, it's not as comfortable. So most of what we do is habitual. We're creatures of habit. But we don't realize that most of the time our motive is on what you can do for me. We want our mate to appreciate or desire or want to connect or do things that we like, instead of taking time to understand what it is that they like. And we can learn those. I can teach you what to do and how to do. I can teach you how to communicate, safe talk, appreciation. I give you the technical skills. I can teach you about your personalities and love languages, what to do. But if we don't have the why trumps the how and the what. If you don't, I coached hockey for 13 years. When those little kids came off the ice, I'd show my little coaching board. And I'd say, what you did in the corner, you pass it over here and you got a shot and you got that's what I'm talking about. They needed the motivation. Well, if you've got the wrong motive, you've got the wrong motivation. So it's so important. The why is so important. And if I have the desire, but what can I do for you versus what can you do for me, then things start to come alive. When we're giving, we're living. There's no joy in getting. We want to get our spouse to see it our way, hear me, see me, get me. But that whole motive of getting destroys a marriage. And God never designed us to be getters. He designed us to be givers. Look at the High River flood, the Fort McMurray fire, the California fire, the Haiti, Japan, New Orleans. Why does it take a world disaster for us to get off of our selfish couches? Can you imagine if husband and wife had that same desire to go give into the other one's life?
Now, Brian, you believe that couples tend to have a lot of fears in relationships that are not helpful. So what kinds of things do people tend to fear?
Great question. Let me ask you a question to help answer that question. How many people think they're not good enough?
Well, I guess it depends on the person, but I would say, yeah.
Right. So, am I significant? Am I saying there's something lacking in my life?
Yeah.
And, or how many people are concerned about what other people think of them?
Mm-hmm.
Right? When I'm worried that I'm not good enough or what others might think of me, who am I focused on?
Yourself.
Right. That's the problem. People don't realize when God said, don't eat from the tree of knowledge and good and evil, really what that means, AKA, is don't put self first. She put self first. She didn't put God first. As soon as I put self first, the love goes away. And when we're focused on self, we believe that we lack. That's the first thing she did. She doubted God and she believed she wasn't good enough. Oh, I don't have enough knowledge. I'm not good. Well, what do we try to do when we're missing what we think, believe what we're missing? We try to get what we think we're missing. As soon as you think from your spouse, I'm not getting what I think I'm missing from my spouse, I'm going to try and get it. What does that look like? Control. And soon as we have this motive of getting, it destroys the marriage. So we buy the lie that we lack. That's our problem. And that's where the fear is rooted in. We buy the lie that we lack. Well, we don't lack anything, but we believe we do. We were made in the image of God, perfect. We don't lack anything. And he's saying, I didn't design you to be getters. I designed you to be givers. Really? Mama bears are giving in their children's life. She comes alive. Oxytocin is released. When she's giving, she's living. She comes alive. Now the husband's getting stopped because he wants to give to his wife. And he's going, who am I going to give to? I say, husbands, when you start loving your children, you are loving your wives. I say, wives, when you're loving your husband, you're loving your children. So when we realize that most of the time our habits are rooted in a motive of getting, and that's rooted in a belief of lack, the fear, I'm not enough.
So what's the advice on overcoming that fear?
Right. Well, this is where I'm going to get a little bit spiritual on you here. This is what happened to me. I had to be broken to be awoken. Here I was, I raised $20 million. I built the largest manufacturing plant in Canada, here at BCT Structures in Lethbridge. There's been a bigger building built since, but I wanted this amazing relationship that I thought I never had. I was so focused on me. I didn't realize I was focused on me. I didn't realize I was wanting to, my wife, to, from my perspective. I didn't realize, okay, what is from her perspective? And when things were breaking down, and so we're both got the fear going on, we're, I'm retreating, she's attacking, rejecting, we got the fear dance going on, we're walking on eggshells. Anyways, I left and I lost my $100 million company and I didn't want to live anymore. And here I was at the darkest time of my life. And I don't know, my great grandmother gave me a little burgundy Bible, but I opened the book of John and I kept reading for 3 hours and I couldn't. Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. I'm in he and he is in me and you're in me. And I closed the book and I said, this is the book of love. God is love. What I was searching for my whole life was this amazing love. but we need to receive. We can't give what we don't have. So I received this amazing love of how much God loves me. That started to change everything. Now I could start to give what I had received, but I was trying to get, but I didn't have anything. I didn't have the right motive and the right heart. So Jesus came to change my heart from getter to giver. So he gave me his love. I knew how much he loved me. Then I had to realize who I am, that I'm his, that I'm not lacking anything. He's made me new. He's made me, I don't lack nothing. Don't buy that lie. And he says, I made you to give. Now start giving to other people. That's my purpose. When that started to happen, everything started to change. So really it comes down to receiving that love that God gives us. And then realizing that we're his, we lack nothing. And this is the thing that's not really taught enough in the church or in our world, we don't lack anything. The enemy wants us to buy that lie like Eve. Oh, you don't have enough knowledge. You're not good enough. Oh no, what am I going to do? So when I started giving, I realized that's where the joy is. That's where the joy is never in the getting.
We're out of time here, but thanks so much for being with us today. We really appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Jeanette.
I know, it goes fast, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like, are we done?
Yeah. Brent Taylor is a Lethbridge marriage coach and the author of His and Hers Greatest Need. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.